Welcome to Body of Light, Episode 5, featuring Adam Apollo. Adam Apollo is a longtime friend of my wife, Kriana Lumen, and he is the first scientific interview I had around the subject of light body. It was a really wonderful interview to dive deep into the subject of light body around someone who wasn't a practicing Buddhist, who didn't know a lot about the Tibetan rainbow body tradition per se, but knew a lot about the internal alchemy from Taoist and other energy, spiritual, esoteric, metaphysical traditions that Adam Apollo is deeply immersed in and has a lot of experience around. It was a great honor to talk with him and deeply connect around the science of light body and what is actually going on within the energetical structure of the human body and the environment when someone does dissolve into light. So this and much more we go deeply into. So please enjoy Adam Apollo.
Well, I'm Adam Apollo of Superluminal Systems, and I'm a CEO and co-chairman of that company, but I'm also a unified physicist. I've been teaching unified physics for a lot of the last decade, and for another 5 years or so before that, I was working deeply on completing a unified theory of the structure of reality and space-time that is fully compatible with a vast array of occult metaphysics. And so my personal background in terms of lineage is in this life, I have been trained in Taoist alchemy. I am an expert in Tai Chi Chuan, as well as a variety of other martial arts forms, some of which I've had the opportunity to study with masters around, and others I cultivated on my own through my own memory from other lifetimes. And I've also worked with many different indigenous elders of different tribes and traditions around the world. I was part of a gathering in the Eastern Mountains where I held fire ceremony and smoked the white buffalo peace pipe and held sweat lodges with over 150 indigenous elders from around the world as a representative of the youth of the tribes and the people that were not present at that gathering. And I have also done multiple prayer runs for world peace with Orville Looking Horse and his family, the chief of the Lakota Dakota Nakota Sioux. And I have studied and participated in a vast array of ceremonies from different indigenous traditions. And that's a deep part of my heart. But I also am a lineage carrier of certain knowledge bases and certain wisdom that is not very present in our time. A lot of the lost knowledge of the Irish people going back to the Tuatha De Danann is part of my own personal ancestral bloodline. And so it's been a part of what I've cultivated to bring out and to teach the world, to help people actually understand who the Irish are and what our tradition actually is when you cut through the sort of veils that St. Patrick's Day and the Christianization of the Irish people put on our culture and our true narrative over a long, long period of history. I also, because of my memories from other lifetimes, have a variety of different traditions, such as the ancient works in Tantra, a lot of the deeper dives into Taoist alchemy, some different layers of martial arts and different styles of martial arts are part of me and who I am and what I'm here to share and express. And I also carry little bits of Mayan tradition and little bits of Incan tradition and little bits of Lakota and little bits of Japanese samurai. And these different parts of me that I carry, I bring to the table at different times in service to people in different ways that I can serve them in knowing who they are in a more profound and deep and comprehensive way. Almost every ancient tradition I've come into contact with or reclaimed within myself has some level of light body knowledge. We may have different terms for that and definitions for that in different backgrounds, from say, the sense of the spirit and its relationship to great spirit, and the ways that we can refine the inner alchemy of who we are to essentially resonate more of who we are out around us. And I'd say a lot of that is very Native American tradition, to cultivate the aspects of the self so that we can be in full self-knowledge and acceptance. And there's other more very specific light body traditions, such as within the martial arts and ancient Chinese medicine, going back to Taoist alchemy, where we describe that as qi and the different permutations of qi. So, for example, the capacity of the Jing to be regenerative within the system, to formulate the energy and the light that allows us to be reborn faster through our cellular system, or the Shen, which is the sense of spiritual chi, which we carry with us between lifetimes and into the dream world and into the spirit world, and the refinement of that aspect of our light body being a guide for us to be able to better understand our relationship with other planes of existence. So we find different definitions for this, and the Tibetan perspective of the rainbow light body really is, I would say, a finale encompassing of what it takes to become your entire self while you're incarnated. The Indians and Hindus might call the same term samadhi, the state of reaching a place of pure union with the divine aspects of the self, so complete that that union resonates through and is present within our bodies. I believe that a lot of the actual practice of light body integration is less about meditation and conceptual ideas and the movement of consciousness simply to a state of awareness of the infinite eternal aspect of the self, but rather about reintegration of the infinite aspects of the self into the limited, finite cellular infrastructure that one is incarnated into, to literally bring the power of the eternal into that which is temporal, that which is the cellular body. And in my own experiences with this, I find that this rainbow body that it's spoken of is experienced through the state when the entire cellular matrix of the body begins to vibrate all at once and in communion with every layer of our beings. You could say when every chakra is lit up, the rainbow body is alive. And the physical experience of this is actually to have your entire body vibrating as though all the strings in the guitar were played, and those tingles of resonance are expressing themselves through you and all the way through you, from the depths of your bones out to the surface of your skin and beyond.
And the strings are perfectly tuned.
Yes, sure.
Beautiful way of putting it.
Well,
Right.
tuning the self, we could say, is a lot about getting in touch with these different aspects of our awareness at different levels, and recognizing that while we may have a lot of strength at, say, a physical level, or a very sharp and astute mind that has great capacity for discernment, we may be weak at other levels. Maybe we have emotional trauma that we haven't faced, or we struggle with communication because we doubt that what we say is going to be heard and received, probably from challenges in childhood. And so tuning the instrument of the body is about getting to know each one of the colors of resonance in the rainbow, each one of the notes in the octave or the spectrum, and getting each one of those notes to play harmonically with each other.
Yes. Yeah. So let's keep going with that. So you
Right?
said regeneration of the self. I really like that. What, according to your different practices, spiritual traditions, lineages that you're a part of, how does one do this? Is there specific light body teachings? Is it like a goal, or is this something you feel maybe happens just as a byproduct?
When I was young and I first began having an experience that I came to understand as a Kundalini awakening, I didn't understand it well enough to know how to harness the energy. And so I experienced the pressure of the Kundalini buildup inside of my body, seeking to move to higher and higher places in my body. And it was only through cathartic transformation at different levels in my being that I was able to let that energy actually flow up and through my system. However, that flow up and out would leave me feeling lost and dazed. It was as if the energy current would move to these high level states of being, but then integrating that energy back was very difficult. And I had sort of naturally went down this pathway and found myself not really integrating that well when I'd let the energy go all the way out and supposedly, shower around my body, which is what is talked about as a practice and tradition. And I also found that there were parts in my lower bodies that weren't stabilizing well with that amount of energy. So I ended up starting to do practices internally to my body that are more traditional to the Tai Chi tradition and to the Taoist traditions around energetic circulation. And through practicing the greater microcosmic orbits in my system, I realized that I could work with the Kundalini energy in a way that was less explosive and rather began to draw it in circulation in a current back down the front of my body and back into my lower dantian. And then through doing that, cultivating this wave of chi going up my spine, down the front of my body, and into the lower dantian, I began to realize that I could build a more sustainable stack in my system to reach more continuous states of higher levels of perception and energetics by building the strength of each of my dantians or my crucibles in my body, starting with below my belly button, 2 inches below in the lower dantian, moving into the middle dantian, or what some traditions call the soul seat, and then up into the upper dantian, some traditions call the arm point. And by building this stack, I found that my overall capacity for resonant awareness and integration of high spiritual experiences became very stable, became very practical, daily use, so to speak, rather than big transformational, I'm up, I'm out, I'm Kundalini blasted off, I've exploded, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get back down into my life. The greater macrocosmic orbit is a practice found in old Tai Chi traditions and Qigong traditions, but its origin is somewhat of a mystery. It's thought of as an ancient Taoist practice, but who originally came up with these capacities to circulate energy in these ways, I'd say remains a mystery to this day.
Activating one's light body, tuning the strings, awakening the chakras, the different dantians. There are practices, there are systems that have been created that have this as a part of a byproduct, as a goal. One can say that this happens naturally from the act of doing practices. When a person dissolves into light, do you feel like this is something that is a goal? And if so, why? Or is it something that just happens
Mm-hmm.
because of the practice, because of the way of how they live and
Mm.
their mind and so on?
I find it fascinating that for some people on the path, the goal is to say vibrate so highly that eventually your body just disappears and you go into a so-called higher state of being in which you've brought your body across into
Right,
another realm.
right.
But for me personally, I don't really look at it as that as being the goal. I like to see that my practice of working with my energy is about integration of my consciousness into my life and into the world and into my experience. I know that when I die, I drop my physical form and I keep around me my light body. And I go with that light body into the spirit world. And at some point, I choose to come from that spiritual body and reincarnate back into another physical body. Now, that is because I am aware of myself as more than a physical being. I'm an etheric being. I have an astral level. I have a causal level. I have an akashic layer. I have a spiritual level and a celestial body. That's sort of my divine essence traveling with me through all possibilities, through time, my soul, so to speak. And each one of these aspects of me are persistent. The physical aspect is the most temporal, meaning that eventually my physical body is going to die. Now, is it possible to sustain that body for longer periods of time or carry it through, hundreds of years or even thousands of years? I absolutely think so. Is that a goal that I have personally? No, it's not. I also see that a lot of what we are trying to achieve through these higher level practices of light body integration in many ways is more about knowing who we are and knowing the layers of being that we exist within so that we have a bit of greater trust and command over the process of our experience when we die and when we leave that body.
Yes.
So if I'm confused about the idea that I am a physical body and I'm also more than that, and my fear is that when my physical body dies, I just go into blackness or I lose consciousness and nothing is the result, then it's actually very likely that during my death, I'm going to have a very confusing process. I'm going to not know how to process my own experience in having exited the physical body. But as I cultivate awareness of my etheric and my astral form, even as simple as the practice of lucid dreaming, the practice of remote viewing, which is actually quite a fun thing to do, learning how to move your perception, move your mind, all the way to astral travel and traveling the astral realms and interacting with other people and beings on the astral. These, I believe, are practices that develop the muscles within us and awareness within us that make death easy, make death just a transition. You're just dropping one body, but you're maintaining full self-awareness of these other bodies. And in this way, I believe personally, I've achieved this light body experience many times where death was simply passing through a doorway into a continuum of experience, and in which I then at some point chose to let go of my level of awareness that I had to incarnate back into a new physical form that I'd have to learn inside of and train and grow up within to be able to participate within the purpose and the dharma of that lifetime.
One of my theories about this is about the not just people who dissolve into light, because there's many masters or beings who don't, more
Mm-hmm.
than others, like more than. So
Yeah.
I feel that like being, it's in a way it's preparing to die in a way, these
Mm-hmm.
practices, because I agree with you that I want to be completely deliberate and conscious as possible when I pass, and to have no extreme attachments or any attachments to anything specific to this life, so that I
Mm-hmm.
can choose deliberately what I want to do when I'm not in this physical form anymore. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
this, I agree with you that this practice, that these, some of these practices that we were speaking of, and whether it's Tibetan or Taoist, is to train the mind to align the energies so that we have that choice. We have a choice, and it's not just like boom back in the body, boom
Yeah.
back in some situation that we don't want to be in. Yeah, I agree with you. So you have a quote on your website, bridging science and consciousness. You're the first kind of more scientific interviewee I've had on this subject, so I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to get your thoughts around, what do you feel is happening inside the body and in the physical body and the etheric energetical body for these beings that do disappear into light?
To explore the science of light body transformation, as we could call it, we need to look a little bit deeper at what the structure of matter and reality actually looks like. So, from a unified physics perspective, what we found is that it is very likely that protons, which are the things that make up the center of atoms, in fact, all mass, the experience of weight of an object, the weight in your body, all of that is in the protons. They're in the nucleus of the atom. And from our perspective, neutrons are actually just protons as well. They're conserving spin inside of the nucleus. And so the nucleus is sharing charge between the objects inside of it. In this perspective, protons are the memory structures of the entire universe. It turns out there happens to be the exact same order of magnitude of quantum vacuum oscillations inside of one proton as there are Planck seconds, which is a small unit of a second, in the lifetime of the entire universe. And this suggests that there is memory in every single proton, and that every proton remembers every moment of its existence from the beginning of the universe. It's also important for me to point out here that protons do not decay, meaning that while almost every kind of matter, every kind of molecule eventually breaks down, the protons inside of it do not. And we believe that a single proton can last 4 times the lifetime of our universe. In other words, we have no idea how long they actually last. And this is beautiful because it gives us an as above, so below physical mechanism for understanding the Akasha, understanding the memory of the whole universe being in existence. And it turns out that because protons are sort of the massive core of atoms, when you look at entanglement happening between things, most of the light entangled reality, i.e., spooky action at a distance, i.e., one space is connected to another space faster than light or sort of outside of time, that it's actually usually the protons that are in entanglement with each other. So there's this network that is making up the whole universe. And it turns out that our bodies, if we look at just how many data bits of connection our bodies can have with itself and with the rest of the universe in 1 second, it turns out that we can connect to 10 to the 111th or more connections per second. Now, that's a 1 with 111 zeros after it, just so you have an idea of how big that number is. And for another perspective, if you took your pinky, you could connect with every star in the entire universe, all of it, with less bandwidth than the tip of your pinky. So when we start to understand the capacity of our body for interconnection, it changes perspective a bit. It says, wow, spiritual capacity is not just something that's beyond the body. Spiritual capacity for awareness of interconnection to the entire universe is literally built into our wetware that our body is. This is this profound vehicle capable of more information transformation, transition, and storage than anything we've ever come across ever in all of our time in the universe as humans. And knowing that, we can start to see that someone going through a transition with their physical body to consciously release or reconnect that matter back into the entire universe could literally be as simple as someone's consciousness becoming fully aware of their entire proton and atomic matrix and molecular matrix, and simply choosing to vibrate all those protons just back out into the universe, letting go of the whole physical structure while maintaining their etheric and astral bodies and higher form bodies, so that they're literally just being in their light body, and their physical light body is returning back into the universe around them in some kind of way. Now, it's also possible that by separation or distancing of atoms and protons from each other, that perhaps it may be possible to open enough space between all of the molecules and atoms in the body that the body simply appears to go invisible, but the entire matrix of the interconnection between all the parts of that system actually stay in the same positions, meaning that all of the chemicals and all of the bones and all the matter is still there, but that we've somehow opened up enough space where that system could become translucent. That's a fascinating idea and concept. And of course, there's nothing that we have from a scientific experimentation standpoint that proves that that's possible. However, we do know that it is possible for our consciousness to make very specific adjustments to our biological structure. And by postulation from the work of Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group, we also know that the mind and the capacity of consciousness has the ability to adjust the physical matter of protons and molecules and the structure of space around us.
Why would we want to dissolve back into the elements, basically? Why do you think someone would have that intention, set their consciousness to, okay, I'm going to now become and allow my body to be intertwined and explored with all that is?
Most of the great spiritual masters talk about the way that applying superpowers and metaphysical skills at different stages of the soul's development can be pitfalls and traps. In other words, that by showing off your ability to do some fantastic thing, in a way, you can that action can be detrimental to your own spiritual growth and evolution. However, that being said, almost every spiritual master at certain points in time will use their metaphysical powers and abilities to show their students or those aspirants who are deeply on the path what something actually looks like and what is possible, often to break their mind or break down their sense of egoic limitation or whatever area of life and or reality they've become attached to through their mental body and emotional and physical body. So why would someone dissolve their bodies back into the flow of space-time? Probably to teach, probably to show someone that, look, when you die, you can die many kinds of ways. Watch what happens when I die. I'm going to literally let my body just dissolve back into the universe, and you can witness me enter that state through bliss. And it's possible then for you to die through bliss. It becomes possible then for you to recognize that matter is not what you think it is, that in fact it's alive and it's an interconnection field that we have command over through our higher states of consciousness.
Do you feel that the people who do show what it's possible to, what is possible at death, who do disappear into light, or who do express cities at some point or another to teach these ascended masters, as we call them, you feel that they are human like us, or do you feel that they are galactic, they are other race beings here, or both?
Great masters here on Earth are human, but they're also more than human. I believe that most of us who have incarnated on this planet are from other worlds, and that we have incarnated on other planets for a very long time. I know this because most of my friends are not from this world, and I'm not from this world. And I remember coming here, and I've been here a long time, since the age of Atlantis, But I fell in love with this world, and I chose to be here and to stay with this world for a very long time. And so when people ask the question, are masters human or are they beyond human? Are they galactic in some way? I don't really see there being a difference. That being human is part of being a mix of evolutionary imperatives from Gaia, as well as evolutionary processes and growth that has happened across the entire galaxy. Now, are there galactic practices and wisdom and knowledge that may have been baked into the teachings of and practices of these masters around the world? I would say absolutely yes. And one of the greatest examples I have, which I've just recently been writing into my book from my memories in other times, is a practice that the Pleiadians have as an initiation ceremony at a certain age when the youth grow up on their home planet, not knowing yet that they're a galactic species, just getting to know their planet, their cetaceans, the ocean, the little island chains, and they learn how to sing to water, to change the vibrational structure of water and be able to interact with water in very advanced ways. And one of those initiations is learning how to sing to the water so well that you can walk out onto the ocean and walk all the way to the horizon while you're singing to the ocean, and to be in this vibrational communion with the ocean. Now, I think it's very fascinating that we have these stories of Yeshua walking on water, and that this was something that he was just capable of doing from his energetic field. And of course, you also have other stories of the Red Sea being parted by Moses by some kind of technology, control of water. And I believe that these are just little hints of a Pleiadian lineage of water relationship that has actually been around for much, much longer than just these Christian stories. There are many people who would call themselves breatharians, who develop different energetic practices to sustain their body through the input of prana, being able to exchange the vital force and energy with the universe itself in order to nourish themselves. By staring at the sun at sunrise and sunset, by doing particular breath work to circulate energy and bring prana into the body, these people essentially cease the need to eat. And in some cases, they can even cease the need to drink water for long periods of time. I have many close friends who have taken this path and have worked with this path. Oftentimes, they work with it in cycles, going through periods where they're completely free from eating, and then into other periods where they will eat normally and they will consume food. And oftentimes, much, much less food than makes sense from the Western medical standpoint of what is needed to actually sustain the body. From my personal perspective, I believe that incarnation is about experiencing the physical world, and that there is so much joy and bliss and beauty that can be experienced through food and through drinks. And so for me, I do not feel that I gain any level of spiritual capacity or greater awareness or greater aspects of myself by avoiding food and simply feeding off of energy. After all, when I drop my body and I'm in the spirit world, that's exactly how I'll be consuming and or exchanging with the rest of the universe, on the spiritual planes. And so while I'm in a physical body, I deeply enjoy food. I love different foods in different ways, and I practice exploring different foods from different cultures and different drinks in order to see how these different vibrations interact with my body and my system. And sometimes my body tells me certain foods are not appropriate for me anymore, or certain things are not helping me to be in the greatest state of clarity that I can be in. And so it's a journey of taking in and letting go and trying different things. But I believe that just as much spiritual evolution can occur through the embrace of the physical world and through the embrace of the vast diversity of matter that we get a chance to experience, as can be done through the practice of refining the body through simple prana consumption. That being said, I also will say that there's a huge difference between eating food in a way that allows you to really absorb its prana and its energy versus eating food in a way that's simply trying to get matter into your stomach that has to be digested. And I would highly recommend absorbing and working with the prana and the fundamental energetics of any food that you do choose to eat.
I just came off of a little, not by choice, eating very little journey myself this whole past year. Semi-starvational yogi in the mountain type diet. My body just did not want much food, and I think it was to heal my gut from
Mm,
earlier, like my 20s and teens of not eating so well. But
yeah.
I noticed that by not eating so much, and especially I was eating raw when I did eat,
Mm-hmm.
my upper chakras and energy was so activated. I was
Mm,
super ungrounded so much of the
mm,
time, but I feel like I needed that. So yeah, I think it's personal too, and I think it's I definitely think it could come in waves for certain people because so many yogic practices and different practices have so much fasting and
mm,
you know, even
mm.
the Buddha has the story of where he didn't eat and he starved himself. So it's just an interesting topic.
I also find that people who choose to cease eating and who tend to just eat raw or very specific smaller amounts of things tend to lose a lot of capacity for deep groundedness in the body.
Yeah.
They feel less substantial and are more susceptible to imbalance, I would say.
Being like a leaf flowing around
Yeah, exactly.
everywhere. I want to get to my main question that I've
Okay.
asking everyone. Can people in the West come to the same allowance, realization, you can call it enlightenment? I see it as just a way of being mentally, physically, emotionally. Can people in the West reach this same state of being, of self-mastery, of
Mm,
the massive capacity to love and clarity and compassion as these beings that do, some of them dissolve into light? Because so many people
mm,
who this happens to, specifically in the Tibetan Buddhism side, they are
mm,
extreme in their practice,
mm,
and a lot of them live in caves for most of their life. So can
mm,
people in the West get to this same, or get to this same state
mm.
being, of realization, however you want to put it?
I believe anyone from any background can achieve total awareness of yourself and total capacity within yourself. If your goal is to achieve certain extremely high vibrational states inside your cellular matrix to the point where you gain control over that cellular body and are able to potentially evaporate it into higher states, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of integration and a ton of energetic practices, gaining command over your energetic system all the way down to that level of specificity. However, if the goal is simply to be more fully aware of all that you are and have easier transition time during death, to get to know the aspects of yourself that are at higher planes of existence and that can relate to spirits that are in the spirit world, that can relate to beings that are only on the astral, certain fairies and beings like that, then you can simply go through life practicing becoming aware that you're more than a physical body and practicing integrating things like your meditation, things like your breath work or your circulation of chi, the work that you do in yoga, and bringing the energetic awareness into your physical body, enhancing the senses in your body, integrating your ability to feel energy through your body. And that means kinesthetic awareness. That means also opening up your ability to hear energy, your ability to see energy, your ability to taste energy, and your ability to smell energy. And as we work on these different facets of ourselves, we become more fully aware of who and what we are by nature. So I believe that in the West, with the way that our culture has so much focus on productivity and work and creation and the development of systems and the development of businesses, that it's absolutely possible inside of all of that to cultivate levels of awareness of our own energetic system and field that essentially is the development of us in our light bodies, in our rainbow bodies, that will ease transitions and death and enable us to have much higher perception throughout our lives. The Western culture, of course, also has a lot of pitfalls, and there's a lot of things that we can get caught in, particularly in the mental field. The conceptual idea of what you are and or what you're capable of is always a box. Anytime you define anything, you are making a box. And you can look at the mental body as a system that is creating crystals, which are essentially boxes of specific shapes through which your light body moves through that crystal and radiates through it, expressing a certain spectrum, like light shining through a prism. And if the crystals that you're creating, the boxes of the mind that you're creating, are resisting certain frequencies of light and or turning them in on themselves or not allowing you to see your potential, then this can be very detrimental to your process. It can create fear. You can begin to believe that you're not good enough, or that you'll never achieve enlightenment, or that you'll never get past a certain stage of development. But all of those are simply ideas. In the reality, you already are a divine being capable of anything that has chosen to experience the limitation of being in this individualized body. And if you can get back just to that memory, the reality that you are an eternal soul, you're already so far along on this journey. And you have a toolkit to essentially break down the mental crystals and belief systems that may limit you from that totality of awareness that is your birthright.
Have you heard of any Western practitioner who has dissolved into light?
I've come across stories over the years of people that have spontaneously combusted, and stories of people that had very mysterious deaths and or the body was not found after death. I think that it's possible that there have been many events where an individual did some level of light body transformation or had a very special kind of departure from their incarnation, but that there being no real contextual knowledge about this in the Western world, it would have been just ignored. It would have been passed on as, oh, weird, something very strange happened. We don't know what it is. And it would make sense that the reason why we mainly hear stories about this from very specific cultures around the world is that those cultures have it as a very natural part of their language and their society. So they're very familiar with it, and they expect that it could happen if somebody chooses to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been researching that, and there's lay people, people who are not monks and sadhus and intense practitioners in Eastern cultures who
Mhm.
have experienced this light body transformation, but
Mm.
I have not found anything so far documented or even a story. You've been opening some great doors in my mind about this. I feel that what I'm getting by talking to more and more people is there is a reason why some people disappear into light,
Mm.
and it's not about that per se, like this ultimate thing. It could be a goal for
Mm.
some people, but I'm feeling that it's a very specific intention, And that really what's going on here and what I'm really going for is the common similarities, the common denominators around these people that did or can do that. What are the qualities of being that they hold? What is their mind, their laugh like? What is their energy like? How do they hold themselves? What do they do? What do they leave here in the world? How much love have they shared? What have they created? Then that's really just as important or just as meaningful or just as phenomenal as people dissolving into light. Any final thoughts, anything you'd like to share on anything related to what you've spoke about or have not spoken about?
We live in a time where there are many kinds of spiritual practices, and there can be a lot of aggrandization around the idea of going into a high temple in the Himalayas and becoming a monk and sitting there for 30 years and learning how to vibrate into your light body and to have this great achievement of having sat by yourself in the mountains until you became enlightened. It's beautiful, and it's a beautiful pathway, and many souls take that pathway. I've taken that pathway in another time. But now we live in a world where it's all about relationship. Can we become enlightened through the relationships in our lives? Can we go into the business world and bring codes of enlightenment to those that are out there producing things and creating things and building infrastructure? If we want to see heaven on earth, it's not just going to happen through us hoping that somehow everybody's just going to wake up and one day they'll all become enlightened. Because even if they do become enlightened or they do realize more of what's true in their reality, they are going to have to apply that knowledge into their business mechanics, into the products they create, into the systems through how they operate, into the technologies that they build for that work to actually fully propagate. So I would highly encourage anyone who's on this journey to not feel like you have to eject and go out and leave in order to find peace and to find this great cultivation in yourself. Instead, focus on how you can integrate into the world and bring your particular gifts and your particular knowledge that can help heaven come to earth through your life and through your business and through your work. Make it every day. Instead of meditation versus work time, make your work time a meditation. Practice driving in meditation. Practice moving as a meditation through Tai Chi and martial arts, and learn how to bring your gifts to this world because we need you now.
Energy, there ain't nobody, illusory, transform to rainbow body, clear light shining, calmly abiding, great perfection, rainbow body, empty, there ain't nobody, illusory, transform to rainbow body, clear light shining, calmly abiding, great perfection, rainbow body.